Hello, welcome to Paint by Blunders. A very different video for me today. This is video 1 in looking at sort of prop painting, cosplay items, or just display pieces that you might want to paint up and just, put on a shelf, or if you know someone does a D&D campaign, they want like a magical item or something like that, or if you're a cosplayer and you want to, put these things on to wear. So essentially how this sort of has come about is I put some pictures up on my Instagram page about prop items that I've painted, and a few people DM'd me asking how I did it, because normally the paint tutorials that I do on Paint by Blunders channel is always sort of your Warhammer D&D style. So as I say, this is video 1, and hopefully in a series of proppy videos that I will be putting out. I've already got the printer firing up next door, printing out for the next video. But anyway, I picked this item because it was super simple. It's a good one if you're looking into getting into this style of painting. It's not too intense and it's very effective, I think. And I believe this is from a PlayStation game called Ghosts of Tsushima. I may have completely butchered that, but apparently a very good game. I haven't played it personally. I will put a link in the description of where I got this file from, because the gentleman who created it has some amazing files on there. I've already purchased sort of 3 or 4. He has a great Magneto helmet that will be coming in a video some point early next year. Anyway, I'm waffling. I hope you enjoy the video. If you're new to the channel, do consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you learnt anything or know anything different that might help out me or a fellow painter, please put it in the description, or the comments rather, because helping each other out and continuing to learn and grow is what this is about. Thank you. Let's get to it.
So here we have our Mask of Vengeance that I've just primed with the Rustylene filler primer. This just helps with any, hairline scuffs or anything like that you might have on your print. And it dries pretty rapid. For this, it's not a bad base having the yellow, but obviously it's not what we want. So I'm going to come in first with a middle stone colour, but it sort of looks like that darker, barky sort of tone that we want. I'm going to apply this with an airbrush just for ease, but you could absolutely just use a brush. Now, the best habit to get into with airbrushing is to get these little metal mixing palettes, and every paint's slightly different in the ratio you thin it down. I tend to use airbrush medium from Army Painter because it has flow improver and thinner all in one, and I find it's just easy. And again, I probably put this on a little bit thinner than what I could have done. Probably could have put it on thicker. Also, Tamiya X20A thinner is also fantastic at thinning down your paints. If it's a real thick paint, sometimes I will just put in a couple of drops just to help it along. You really don't need to with the AK stuff, but I was just demonstrating sort of the amount I would put in. And I would just give it a good zhuzh in one of these little pots with an old brush. I've got one that I snapped. Enjoy the shaking camera. And just get it to that nice consistency. I think everyone says skimmed milk. Now, I couldn't tell you what that is, but honestly, the more you do it, the more you get used to it. But I always think you just want it to flow down the cup pretty, unhindered. Always test it on a bit of paper first. It just saves you, aggro on your model, whether it's a 3D print or a miniature. I'm just giving it a quick test. This isn't how fine I can spray a line with a needle. And I'm going about 6 inches away, or a fist is a good distance giver. And I'm just going around giving it a good old base coat. In an ideal world, you want to do this, a couple of times. Thin coats, but multiple coats is the way with airbrushing, and it's incredibly difficult to stay disciplined like that. So For your air pressure and your needle size, for those of you that are interested, I spray at around 22, 23 psi, and I'm currently using an Iwata, I think it's an Eclipse, and I think I've got a 0.3 needle in there. 0.3 is my favourite because I can do everything with it. I don't like constantly changing needles and guns. I'm lucky enough that I have a few airbrushes, but I just like my one workhorse, 0.3, done. So when that's dry and I've put a couple of coats of that middle stone on, I'm going to add some sand yellow. Now, sand yellow just over the top is a little bit bright, so I'm going to roughly do sort of a 50-50 mix between the two. Just to bridge the gap, and then I'll come in with the pure sand yellow afterwards. This will just hopefully have a nice transition. And it's the same process again. I put it in my little cup, add some thinner or the airbrush medium as such, give it a damn good mix, and then just tip it straight in my airbrush. If there's any small residual bits of the middle stone left in the gun where I haven't really cleaned it out properly, I'm not worried about that because we're just blending tones and it's all very samey. It's not too important. If I was dramatically changing colour, I'd give it a good clean. Again, always nice little habit just to test it on your paper, and you could also test the tone against the base coat. So as I'm going round just gunning this next lighter layer on, really trying to get those raised surfaces and to try and avoid those deep dark areas where dirt would sort of naturally accumulate. I'm not trying to put too much volume in it, like a light volume, which is the big difference I find between painting sort of props and cosplay things in comparison to sort of your miniatures and stuff like that, where you are trying to really exaggerate those light volumes to add sort of drama to the piece. You can absolutely do this with props, etc., if they're just going to be lovely display pieces. But if you're painting it to go on camera, for instance, in my opinion, you really don't want that because it's going to look completely unnatural compared to the way the scene is lit. So this is our final sort of airbrushed base tone or highlight going on, and this is quite an extreme one. This is Pro Acrylics Dark Ivory, and as you can see, compared to what we've done on the mask, this is quite a change. Now, same thing, airbrush medium. I don't keep saying it, apologies. It's the same every time. So what I wanted to do with this, I wanted this to sort of read as the sort of the oils and the, you know, the natural stuff that comes off your hands where you're constantly handling something. This mask for me is meant to be super old and, you know, has been through the work sort of thing. So I wanted to just put this highest highlight where I think someone's hand would be handling the mask, taking it on and off, you know, so it's going to naturally fall on sort of the highest peaks and some of the edges. So that is all of the sort of base airbrushing done. Again, you could do this all with a brush. If you didn't want to airbrush it, I would use stippling because that would create some really nice transitions. I did notice there are these 4 little rivet things. Now, the little details do matter, but they also are not worth losing sleep over. So I just picked up any metallic I had, you know, close to hand, which in this case was Vallejo chainmail. I use it quite a lot. It's a good, just a solid metallic paint. So we're going to get into weathering this down now. I'm going to use oils, but you could easily just use acrylic washes if you've come from like a miniature wargaming background and you've got your Agrax surf shades and your chestnut inks, etc. All of those work absolutely fine, but I adore oils. And you'll see why when it comes to how we can smother a model and then remove it. If you've never used oils before, a great way to decant it is on a bit of paper or bit of card. Essentially, for the purposes of oils in this, where they take forever to dry, we want some of that oil essentially to go away. So if we put it on paper, or ideally some absorbent sort of card, like saving a Amazon parcel box, for instance, that'll last you forever. Putting it on that first, that card or oil will draw out some of the oil, and it'll just make the oil we're going to use to paint with just behave a lot better, and it'll help with the drying time because oils take forever to dry. So again, my trusty little metal pots, I think you can pick these up on Amazon for like maybe a £5 for 6 of them or something, and obviously they last forever. And I'm just putting in a little bit of thinner to essentially make it into a very thick wash. And as you can see, all of that lovely airbrushing is now gone. But don't worry, it will turn out well. Trust the process. And we're just going to cake this all over the mask. For those of you, if you've seen any of my Warhammer painting tutorials, I love using oil washes, super thick ones like this, and also really thin ones where you can just set and forget, paint it on, and it will just work. So that's all done. I've left this about 45 minutes, but you could leave this hours. It's still a little bit, it will come off a little bit of my finger, but this is fine. So I'm going to take a makeup sponge. These are fairly cheap. You can get them online in like big bags. And you want a makeup sponge because when you start removing the oil, and all we're doing is putting a little bit of clean thinner on it and just moving it around. You're wicking it away, you're dragging it, you're creating all these interesting textures and effects. Like, you keep dragging it one way, it'll look like weathering, where it's just sort of rained down the mask, and I love that. So one of the things I always get with any oiling is, should you varnish the model first, because you are technically using like a paint thinner / remover. I always have never had a problem, but if you're not used to doing it, it doesn't hurt to varnish it. It's only going to help, but it is an additional step. The thing I find, if paint starts coming off, it is normally pressure. And that comes from using something a little bit more abrasive and a little bit more force than you should. That's why I always use makeup sponges. I've used cotton buds in the past, but I always get into trouble with those. So yeah, a soft touch and a makeup sponge. Now, on to the next section. So I'm happy with how I've sort of taken off that oil, but I want to add a little bit more depth to certain areas. Equally, you could leave it here, you could highlight it, or you could, as I say, just leave it. But I'm going to come in, pick out some of those recesses and some of those cracks, and just try to make it look a little bit more fancy. Again, I'm coming in with the oils, but at this stage, you could easily just use an acrylic wash or an acrylic ink to save you some of the cleanup, but this is what I'm going to do. And as this is paint by blunders, for those of you who have never seen my videos, I don't really like planning stuff. I like the creative process of just going, oh, that might look good. I'm going to go for it. So they're the three colours I wanted. I decanted a little bit onto a bit of paper, and I just wanted that sort of mossy, grimy tone, like there's some not mould as such, but there is something growing in the deepest sort of recesses. So I mixed up my little mossy green colour, and I'm just going in picking out like the top of the teeth and sort of the deepest sort of scratches on the mask where something's, you know, clearly given it a ding over the years. Now again, you can see how you can quite clearly see the brush marks as I'm doing this. With oils, it's beautiful. Once this is dried, if you can still see quite clearly where a paintbrush has been, you can put a little bit of thinner on that paintbrush and you can just blend it away. You really can create some amazing effects with, I'll be honest, very little effort, which is perfect. And any mistakes you make, you can sort of just wick away pretty quick. But as you can see, I'm just going round and I just want to define some of those really interesting shapes, especially around the cheek where it's got the big grin. It's such a good model. I will put a link to the gentleman who I purchased the file from in the description. I got it from Colts 3D. The guy has done loads of really, really good 3D models. I think I've purchased quite a few of his things now. So one of the final things I did was use the forest green, or sort of the olive green oil paint, thinned right down, just to add to sort of those big chips and breaks and just some of the deepest recesses. It might not read too well on camera, but I think when the model is in hand, it really looks quite effective. So, dry brushing to finish now. I don't really want any super sharp clean edges, so that's why I'm just going to dry brush it. So I'm going to use that 50-50 mix to start with of the middle stone and the sandstone. And yeah, if you've not dry brushed before, quick overview. Tiniest amount on your brush, and you just want to work it away on a paper towel, or you get these things called dryer palettes, which are essentially just textured MDF, to get most of the paint off the brush. And then once you've achieved that, you are lightly going back and forth, and the paint will just clip the sharpest edges, and it adds a really nice subtle effect that you can build up to be quite extreme. Dry brushing is quite forgiving, and you can create some really good effects with it. So after I've done that 50-50 mix, I'm going to come in with just the dark ivory. Sorry, I completely forgot what it was called. And just as a final sort of dry brush. And as you can see, it really helps just define those edges, and it makes it look quite natural. If you did the sort of the classic sort of edge highlighting, if you come from a miniature painting background, it would look a lot less natural, but you would have a cleaner edge. So that's that. That is the finished article. I think it looks super cool, super effective, and I'll definitely be printing some more of these sort of mask models and getting them up. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's a little bit of a different one from me, but some people asked me on Instagram if I would do any prop painting videos. So yeah, this is video 1. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, if you're new to the channel, do consider giving us a subscribe or a like. And if you paint these sorts of things and you've got any tips for me or anyone else that might watch the video, please put them through in the comments. The community is fantastic, and in my opinion, it's all about helping each other and sharing that knowledge.